Okay, everybody, thanks for joining us here with our video tour of our compost facility in Aberdeen, Maryland. We're here at Veteran Compost. I'm Justen Garrity. I'm the founder and president of Veteran Compost. And what we're going to do today is take a couple minutes, take a walk through our facility so you can see how we make the compost. So let's walk this way. We'll walk and talk as we go. We're going to follow ourselves up the driveway here. So if you come to visit us, you'll notice it's a pretty suburban atmosphere. It's not a big industrial facility. This is a 30-acre farm. And we use about 3 acres for the compost operation. We're right on the edge of the town of Aberdeen, so if you come to visit us, we got a Rita's Water Ice and a 7-Eleven within walking distance, so we're not out in the boonies and we're not in some industrial park. We're right here in town. The farm itself dates back to the Civil War and beyond, so we've had people out here with metal detectors finding buttons and all kinds of artifacts that date to Civil War and earlier. The house itself, the back portion is from like the 1850s. So the house serves as our office now. So if you ever call us, we do have tech support and all that and customer support. That's where we're sitting. We have our garage here. We're proud to do the majority of our maintenance ourselves. So when you run a compost facility or any farm operation, maintenance is one of your biggest costs and one of the biggest parts of your day. And so we have our own ability to weld and fix trucks and do all that stuff here. We also have our barn. So if you order one of our soil mixes, that's where we do the mixing. So all of our seed starters, our worm castings, our biochar, it's all mixed there inside. And in another video, we'll cover kind of how we do the mixing and what that looks like. So behind me, you'll start to notice hidden behind all these buildings is the compost site. So we have off to my right, your left, some of our trucks. You'll see the dump trucks and all that. You'll start to see some of the equipment, some of the guys working. So here at the facility, we have 5 guys working on site each day and another 5 personnel out driving at this facility here in Aberdeen. So let's walk over here and let's see how the food scraps arrive and then where they go. So our model for the most part on collection is a 1-for-1 swap. So when we come to your location, we drop off clean bins and we pick up bins that have food waste in them. So the bins come back here where they're unloaded, and then they're dumped out on a bed of carbon. So you can see all the wood chips here. We're gonna dump it out on that carbon so that any of the moisture, any of the liquids will be absorbed. And everything here runs the gamut. So as Joe dumps out some of the bins, you'll notice there's a healthy mix of stuff in there. This bin is primarily food waste. And what we'll do is the liner gets removed and the bin will go and get washed so it can be used on the next stop. And then down the line, we can look at some of these other bins and what's in there. Different customers have different kinds of food waste. So here you see compostable bags. We handle any kind of certified compostable items, cups, plates, bags, etc. We do grocery waste, we do meat, dairy, bones, shells. Anything that you can buy at the supermarket, we can compost it here. So what'll happen is this food waste on the bed of carbon will get more carbon on top of it, more wood chips, and it'll get mixed together into this pile like you see over here. So this is our kind of mixed up material. About 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 wood chips to food scraps. That gets us our right carbon and nitrogen ratio and our right moisture content. And then from here on the pad, it's going to go back to the compost pile. So this is an all-weather pad, concrete, so that we can take food waste in. Our busiest season is actually the winter, so all your holiday waste between November 1st, when everyone decides they hate pumpkins, all the way to the Super Bowl, we do all kinds of food waste and all kinds of holiday waste as well. So when it's cold, that's where we're making the hottest compost. So you can see the loader, they're taking this pre-mixed material and it goes back onto the pile. So we use a method, it's called aerated static pile method. It's actually called, we use positive aeration. So you'll notice the blue barrels hooked up to pipes, and what we're doing is we're forcing air into the pile. So this is the set it and forget it, the Ronco rotisserie method. Once we build the pile, we don't turn it. There's no windrow turner here. There's no loaders turning the piles. Once we build them, off they go. So that's why it's important to get the right mix there at the pad so that things go along well. So you'll notice like our target goal for temperatures is to be above 131 degrees Celsius for at least 72 hours. So this probe thermometer shows you we're parked right in the right spot for thermophilic composting. So you'll see the pipes here. All these pipes are hooked into blowers. The blowers are on timers. And so what we can do is we can look at our temperatures, we can look at our moisture content by digging into the pile with a post hole digger, and we can kind of make adjustments as needed to have the blower be on longer, have it come on shorter, more frequently, less frequently, depending on where we want to get at. So we want to be thermophilic for 131 degrees or 55 degrees if you're on the Celsius for at least 72 hours. We typically are there for several weeks. And what that does is that allows us to take in all those materials you wouldn't do in your backyard. So we do crabs all summer here in Maryland. Now we're getting into oysters. We're doing meat and all those things that you normally wouldn't do in your home. That's why we can do it here, because of those nice temperatures to reduce any pathogens and break down any material. So let's follow down the line and see what the active pile looks like. And as we go along, you'll see the pile gets covered with mulch vines. So we make sure that the pile is insulated and that no pests can get into the pile. So we don't want flies, we don't want the neighborhood raccoon or anything hanging out there, no seagulls, nothing like that. So as our active pile grows, we'll continue to insert pipes into the pile, and the pile will continue to work its way backwards. So we use the same footprint throughout the year for our compost operation. So as we get back here, it's time to get the other compost out of the way. So as we're building our new pile, we're removing the old material to go up to be screened, and that frees up more real estate to continue to build our new pile. So this is one big slinky working its way back and forth each day. And we spend about 28 to 30 days ideally here in this active area before we go up the hill to be screened. So as you'll see, he's grabbing some material here, and we'll follow him up the hill to the screener. Just make sure we stay out of the way. Not getting hit is the goal every day when you clock in. So, you'll notice up the hill here, a lot of other piles. We kind of talk about that while they're pushing up the hill. We have a big pile of wood chips, so that's our carbon. We always try to keep a couple weeks worth of carbon material on hand. We don't do any yard debris. We don't do any biosolids, so we try to stay chemical free. We are working this in the next couple months to bring organic compost online. So because we take in compostable plastics, ironically, from places like Mom's Organic Market, if you take in compostable plastics, you can't be certified organic. So we're working on building compost piles off to the side that only take in produce and crabs. So we'll have a high nutrient, compostable product-free product that can be certified organic for organic farmers. So if that's something that's important to you, that is something we're working on bringing out for the spring 2021. So up the hill here we have our screeners. This is our new purchase for this year. It's larger than our smaller screener. So when I started out screening by hand with a screen I made with parts from Home Depot. I bought an electric worm harvester after that we'll see later to screen. I bought a small McCloskey, and now we've upgraded to a larger screener. So the way a trombone screen works, it's this big spinning drum. So you load the material in, the drum's set to a 1/2 inch, so anything that's a 1/2 inch or under is going to come out the other end as our product. Anything that's larger than 1/2 inch is going to come out this end to be reused. So all those large wood chips, any rocks, any debris, that's where you might see your plastics and things like that we need to capture. So our guys will come in, they'll pick the trash out, and then they'll recycle that wood chip material back down to the pad. We saw them unload the bin. So all the material here will continue to be recycled through the process until the particles break down small enough to go through the screen. So let's go around the side, out of the way of the loader, and we'll watch him put a couple buckets in there, and we kind of watch the machine as it goes. So, like I said, we have the large pieces coming out here. You can see the wood chips and things like that. You see the drum with the brush on it. It's going to allow that stuff to pass through the screen and make sure the screen doesn't get gummed up. There's a hopper where we load the material in. And then all the nice fine material. We'll walk past the engine real quick and we'll pick up the conversation. Probably a very zen-like, live feed on YouTube of compost just streaming onto the pile and forming the cone. So this is all that nice fine material you'd want to buy at your house for gardening or for your farm. So you can see that the particles are a lot finer, and this doesn't look like the food waste we saw them dumping out a couple 100 feet away from here. So it's now turning into something that kind of looks like compost. But from this area, we're now going to go into the curing phase. And so if we turn around, we'll see all the different piles that are back here. We start at the top of the hill and we work our way down to the bottom of the hill. As we build a windrow, we'll then continue to flip it and move it all the way down the hill. So all these piles spend weeks or months here as we continue to flip them down. And each time we flip it, it helps to provide more oxygen, continue to mix the material and allow it to cool down. So our goal is the longer the compost sits, just like making wine, the better it gets. And so if we can let it rest, we can let the pH, the nutrients, the microbes, everything get to a happy point and kind of lead to a better compost. So as we go down the line, you'll see the piles till eventually we get to the point where they are out for sale. So we'll walk down here, we'll take a look at the compost and our topsoil that's new this year, and then we'll walk back. We're not in the bulk business, so probably we'll see what the bags look like. We'll show how the bags look like. So on all these piles, we have new this year a formal QA/QC process. So each week we're gathering temperature readings, and then periodically throughout the month we do our own in-house pH EC tests for each batch, and then 3 to 4 times a year we send the tests out for chemical analysis at outside laboratories. We typically use North Carolina as our test, so that way we understand, you know, good data on what's going on and have some confidence in the product before it ends up, you know, in your farm or garden. So you can see our compost here, and then next door to that, topsoil. So this year we started to produce topsoil, which is a blend of compost, soil, sand, and occasionally mulch fines, depending on the consistency. So that's good for some applications. And compost, if you're ever curious about what's the right product for your application, you know, we have Julie, our soil scientist, or myself available to help you out. And I promise I'll probably not try to sell you the most expensive stuff. I'm pretty cheap, so we'll probably find the cheapest way to find a solution. So what we'll do is, if you're not looking for stuff by the yard, delivered or pick it up, you probably want it in a bag. What we'll do is we'll walk down the middle aisle again, take a look at all the piles, and go check out the bagging operation, and then answer any questions you might have.
Steam coming off the piles.
Yeah. One thing, while we're here, if you're a fan of beer and brewing, we take in hops. So grain from breweries typically goes to animal feed, which is a good use for it, but hops are generally inedible for cattle feed. So if you ever have the need to roll around in IPA-like materials, we have dumpster loads of hops we get in from Heavy Seas Brewery. So when that happens, the whole place smells like a frat party about every 2 to 3 weeks that we take in that material. So we do take in material from outside sources, so not just stuff we collect, but we take in all kinds of other produce and food waste from other customers, material from food manufacturing and things like that. We do product destruction, so every once in a while we'll get product that's spoiled and inedible that we'll depackage and break down, recycle the packaging, and compost the remainder of the material. Last year, we the same week had 50 drums of coconut water come in, and we had 2 truckloads of jasmine rice that went bad. So we were making our own coconut rice because the rice is too dry to compost on its own. You got to kind of pre-soak it so the kernel will break down, and the coconut water was too liquidy. So we put them together, and it was like a very rudimentary, industrial level making rice by the bucketful here with the skid loader. So our bagging operation is much the way it's been for the last 10 years. We still bag by hand. Now, on the top of our capital plan for next year is a bagging machine to try to increase our efficiency and save everyone's back. And everything that you see here, we still bag by hand. So we typically have 4 quart bags and cubic foot bags. So this is our compost. When we bag it, we screen it a second time to make sure it has a good consistency. We also bag our square foot garden mix, our biochar, super soil, all those items, you know, for consumption if you don't need a whole truckload of stuff. So we also have back here our worm composting operation, something we'll get into in the future, kind of describe how it is that we do that. We have about 20 cubic yards of material in process at any time where we're breaking it down. For our worm composting, we use some of our semi-finished compost along with Wawa coffee grounds, and that seems to be something that the worms really like and yields a pretty good product. So appreciate everybody joining us for the tour today, and hope like you saw. All right, so if you join us for the live session, what we'll do is we'll go over here and we'll take a couple of minutes to answer any questions you might have. And yeah, let's just step over here to the garden. All right, cool.
I can see a couple of questions.
Okay. There we go. All right, we got like a tripod. We're trying to be semi-professional here. So, one thing to note, this is all one plant behind us. This is a squash that was a volunteer this year that just kind of took off. So these are like the fruit that we're taking off of it. Pretty cool looking. This was all one plant. We didn't plant this. It just, a seed fell in here and off it went. Underneath there you can see some of the asparagus and tomatoes trying to eke out an existence. We just took over the entire plot, and it'd be larger if we didn't mow the grass around it. So we put compost loavers in this, so those larger particles you saw that we don't sell, that's what we put in here, and that did well. So ideally your squash would do even better in the real compost, not the junk that we use.
Right. Ready for questions?
Yeah, we got some questions. What do we got?
Okay, so first question is, I may have missed this, but if the incoming food scraps are not from organic food waste, doesn't that mean the compost will not be organic? Do you want to take that
So
up?
the question about organic produce is a good one. That always is kind of interesting. Generally, my rule for food waste for the last 10 years has been, if I wouldn't eat there, then I'm not going to take their food waste. So we try to stick to places that have pretty reputable stuff. There is always going to be, you know, some amount of pesticides or waxes or chemicals on the outside of produce. That's why we all probably wash our apples and things like that before we eat them. But, and Julie can correct me if I'm wrong, it can still be organic even if it's non-organic produce, because the idea is that the process would reduce anything in terms of the composting process. So we can't have the compostable plastics in there, and there are a pretty good list of what we can't have in the pile. But whether it's organic or non-organic produce, it can still produce organic compost. The tricky thing too is when you buy soil products, everybody puts the word organic on their products. So if you go to Home Depot today, everything has the word organic because it is technically an organic substance. It's just not certified organic. So that's one thing that makes it hard when you're buying. So typically the certified organic product that we're trying to make is for those farms that need it, or folks that want to try to have the cleanest stuff for their garden.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Next question. I missed the very beginning. Is this Fritz that we were watching?
Oh,
do you want to talk a little bit about what Fritz does?
Fritz is much better looking. You can tell him I said that. So no, I'm Justen. So I started the Aberdeen facility. So Fritz is my partner in the DC operation, and then day to day he makes all the magic happen down there. So we, as a company, have two businesses. We have our Aberdeen facility here, Veteran Compost, which is our Maryland-based compost operation, and we have Veteran Compost DC. We have been based at Whitehall Farm in Virginia. However, we were evicted in the middle of COVID, and we now are at Arcadia Farm in Alexandria, which is a great facility, great mission-based organization. So Fritz runs our operation down there for residential collection and runs our Virginia facility. I run the Maryland operation. So, yeah.
Well, that's it for questions.
That's it for questions? Okay, well, cool. Anybody else from the peanut
Oh,
gallery?
wait, yeah. We got one more here.
Are you
We got a couple more.
Charging landscape companies to dump wood?
We're charging landscape companies to dump wood. We are charging the rest of this year for wood chips. So we are charging for wood chips this year. We've kind of reached where we want to be at with accepting them for free. So we're charging $20 a load for wood chips through the end of the year, and then we'll kind of evaluate where our stockage is at. So one thing that comes along with this business is per capita, we are one of the most regulated and inspected industries in the state. So we have inspectors here every week. And so we want to manage our feedstock levels, and our wood chip pile was at a point where it wasn't worth getting in trouble for. So we're going to stay underneath our threshold. So we still accept them. We're just making folks compensate us for them. Is that it?
And then it got, are the screen windrows tested for chemical analysis throughout flipping or only at the end?
Yeah, so how do we test the windrows? So that's kind of cool. So I mentioned Julie earlier, and she's behind the camera today as the camera person. But one thing that we did this year when we hit our 10-year anniversary is we can continue to do things the way we've been doing them, or we can get better. Take it as an opportunity to kind of buckle down. And so one thing this year is we kind of embrace science. I know that's controversial in America right now with the way things are going, depending on how you feel about COVID. But we are now doing a lot more testing of our products on site. So we have a pH and EC meter, and what we've been doing is testing the piles every time we flip them. And that's kind of helped us to kind of evaluate where the piles are at, which ones are ready, and kind of understand more of when the right time to flip is and how much that helps us adjust things. So it's kind of been an interesting science experiment to watch the pH kind of continue to change over time. I don't know, Julie, if you want to
Sure.
let Julie step out and discuss that more since you did all the testing.
Yeah, so compost pH is a pretty complex and variable thing. It usually starts, around neutral, and then as things start to break down, it actually gets down into acidic. Then when a different type of organism starts kicking in and breaking other things down, it'll actually raise above into the basic level and stay there for a while until over time it gets down back to neutral. So right around neutral is where we want it for a finished compost pile. And yeah, on a regular basis, I'll go out and test each row, see where they're at for pH and EC. EC is a measure, it's called electrical conductivity. It's basically a measure of soluble salts, but a lot of those salts are nutrients. So it's kind of a proxy for how nutrient rich the compost is, or at least how many available nutrients are in the compost. And one thing that I love about food waste compost, I'm from Ohio, and when I was there I worked for another food waste composter, and the EC levels are, you don't want them to be too high because that might burn your plants, but they tend to be pretty high in food waste compost. It's made from food, it's got a lot of good nutrients in it. So yeah, and then on top of that we'll send, there are things that we can't test in-house unless we invested in, hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment. But every once in a while we will send a sample out for commercial lab testing, and that gets us things like total nitrogen, carbon to nitrogen ratio, phosphorus, potassium, and a whole suite of micronutrients, along with lead as well. We do test to make sure that there aren't any heavy metals in any of our materials, so it's safe for gardening.
That is one reason, I always joke that I drive an F-150, I eat steak, so I'm not a fully embraced environmentalist, but I think that keeping out the yard waste and the biosolids is important, so that way we try to keep out any risk of, heavy pesticides, chemicals, things like that being in our product. And somewhere on the internet is a picture of me eating the stuff, so I'm all in on trying to keep it safe. So, is that it?
That's it.
Cool. Well, hey, I appreciate everybody watching today. And if you have any questions in the future, you can always email us, info@veterancompost.com. Message us, call us, whatever is helpful. We're always happy to help solve garden problems and help people with composting. Great. Thank you.